We're going to talk about how you can prepare yourself for an interview and really get into what employers are looking for when they ask certain questions in a job interview. How do you know what those questions are, and what questions should you ask before the interview is over? And we'll have some sample answers that we'll go over today. So I think you'll really enjoy and learn a lot from this topic. And of course, we'll end to talk about any questions that you have. So as you prepare for a job interview, it's always exciting. Of course, it's also nerve-wracking. But when you land an interview, there's a lot of adrenaline and a lot of emotions pumping through you. So how can you ensure that you are set up for success for this process? Let's talk about it. During a job search, when you apply to a job, you likely have already researched the company a bit. That research should continue as you prepare for the interview. You likely will have to go a little bit more in depth. You want to see what you can glean from sites like Glassdoor. It's possible that there are even interview questions listed on that site from people who have interviewed at the company before. You definitely want to portray in an interview that you really understand the role and the company, such as their overall goals and, of course, their mission and vision. And so your research is really going to help you be able to illustrate that you understand and know these things about the company and the role. You also want to make sure that you review the application you submitted as well as the job posting. And here are two quick tips that I really want to share with you. If you have a good tracking system in place, you should have your application materials and the job posting saved, printed, or noted somewhere for a time such as this when you get called for an interview. As you review your application and the job description, identify the key or high value skills from the job posting and think about ways you can incorporate those into your interview answers. The skills you have that match the job description, of course, not the skills that you don't quite match. All right. And a side note, this is kind of the second tip, and it was sort of alluded to in the first tip, but you really want to make sure every time you apply to a job to copy or print or paste that job description somewhere else, because by the time you get an interview, that job posting may have come down from the company website. So you might not be able to refer to it, but it really is a helpful tool to refer to while you are preparing for a job interview. All right. And finally, you are going to practice your answers. Most employers, you can count on this, will be asking you behavioral interview questions. So you want to think of your answers in terms of the acronym STAR, which stands for situation, task, action, and result. This acronym or exercise should give you the opportunity to create several sort of snippet answers or stories, short stories, of course, to illustrate who you are and what you can bring to the role and to the organization. All right, let's continue with what other steps to take before the interview. You want to be thinking about your space. Where will you do the interview if it isn't in person? A lot of us are looking for remote or hybrid roles, so the interview actually won't be in person. So what does your space look like? Have you chosen a space that minimizes distractions as much as possible? For example, you don't want a partner or a child walking in mid-interview. Sometimes even pets can be really distracting. During an interview, of course. This is less important if this is an interview without video, but you still want to ensure a quiet area to talk and one where you will be able to hear the questions easily. So you don't want the interviewee yourself to be distracted, and you don't want the interviewer to be distracted. So keep that in mind when you are thinking about the space for this interview. If the interview is on video and you have a home office space already set up, give it a once over, make sure that it looks neat, organized, and appropriate for the work and for the job. Remove any items that would be in the view of the camera that could be seen as distractions or anything controversial. In terms of your actual technology equipment, many newer computers may come equipped with the webcam, microphone, and speakers. So your machine might already have that. Some people, you might choose to upgrade or add a higher quality headset with a microphone. No matter the tools you are using, be sure to test them ahead of time. Do not skip this step. Enlist the help of a friend or family member to test the tech with. Test the tech with somebody else. And don't forget to also test the specific platform you are going to use for the interview itself. And really doing this ahead of time saves a lot of nerves and allows you to iron out any issues before the interview takes place. Now, sometimes there might be a technical glitch on the actual day of the interview, and that could happen. But because you have practiced and understood and gotten familiar and were able to get familiar with the platform, it will help you be calmer in troubleshooting any issues that may occur right before the interview. Also, as part of your preparation and testing, make sure you are looking and putting your eyes in the right place. Generally speaking, looking at the light on your computer, if it's a built-in webcam, is the best. I work with a lot of reporters and record videos, and I'm not afraid to do a dry run myself, looking where I think I should be looking. I record that and then watch it back to make sure everything looks okay and as natural as can be. Again, this is going to ensure a more smooth interview because you will have seen yourself, you will have practiced with the tech, and troubleshot any challenges ahead of time. Anticipating any issues is a big part of staying calm, cool, and collected. You also want to dress the part, and this means different things depending on the interview. You might not need to be in a three-piece suit, but it is important to look professional and that you portray an image that you are ready, willing, and more than capable to get this job done and get it done well. And you also want to show that you would be an appropriate representative of the organization should they extend an invitation to you for employment. As an aside, even if you are not going to be on video, we recommend that you absolutely dress the part. This is going to help with your mindset. Make a note on your calendar to check in or log in about 10 to 15 minutes before the start's time, so you have a little bit of time to work any tech issues that may occur on the day of. Certain programs, I use a Mac, and sometimes Microsoft Teams takes a little longer. Some people use a PC and other you just want to get a handle on everything ahead of time and give yourself time to prepare for anything unexpected that occurs before the start time of the interview. Okay, so what are employers getting at when they do an interview? Just like you as a potential employee want to know if the organization or the company is a good fit, the company really is wondering if you'd be a good fit for them at the company and on the specific team. So they're going to ask you questions so they can, number one, gauge your interest in the job or company. And just a little side note, this is where good research comes into play. They also want to know your top skills like problem solving, handling challenges, whatever skills are mentioned in the job posting that you need to connect. And they want to know if you're a good fit for the team and the company. So as you can see, maybe you're thinking, again, this is where those behavioral questions will come into play. It really gives a potential employer the insight they need to make the best hiring decision they can. All right, so here is the meat of the presentation. This is what you came for. How do you know what questions are coming? All right, so there are obvious questions to job interviews. It should not be a surprise that you are ever asked, "Tell me about yourself." This is generally how an interviewer starts the interview, right? It can break the ice. They may say something like, "Please tell me about yourself, about your career, what you are doing now," or something along those lines. Sometimes they may even add in something like, "In a minute or less, tell me about you," and things like that they're really looking to learn. There will almost always be a question about your strengths and another question about your weaknesses. You can prepare to answer a question like, why do you want to work at this organization? Why are you leaving, or why did you leave your current role? And sometimes even questions about where you see yourself in the future. A popular way to say this question is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Some companies even like to throw some kind of curveball question in as well. I've heard people say they've been asked, what is your favorite holiday and why? If you could be an animal, what would you pick and why? And these questions are designed to give the employer insight on how you think on your feet, and also a little bit more of an insight into your personality and your values. There are some other resources that you can use to determine what questions might be asked in an interview. And as part of your research that you will do as you prepare, I already mentioned going to the Glassdoor site, but don't forget about the FlexJobs blog and diving into the company website, their social media pages, because that can really help you gain insight into the organization. So it will help you anticipate maybe some questions that are coming. The FlexJobs blog has a number of different articles on popular interview questions. These will be sent to you in the resources as well. And doing some of this research and preparing and looking at some of these other places will also help you determine what questions would make the most sense for you to ask when it's that time of the interview. And we'll talk about that a little later. Okay, so here's what you've been waiting for, how to answer these questions. So we're going to answer the main questions that I just shared, so you have some ideas on how you can formulate your responses to questions like this. If they're asked in a similar way, might not be verbatim, but you'll know what they're getting at. And this will give you sort of a starting point for your brainstorming to determine what you yourself should share as it relates to the job that you are applying to and the company. All right, so the first one is, tell me about yourself. I mentioned already, it is an icebreaker. It's a way to get things started. It will give the employer a sense of who you are and your background a bit beyond your resume, even though you are giving some background. So let me just read this answer. It says, I'm a recent college graduate with a degree as a certified accountant from Kentucky State University. I also completed an internship at a financial management firm where I got hands-on experience in financial analysis. During my time at the firm, I discovered that I enjoyed managing finances and creating investment plans for retirees, which led me to apply for this role. So this gives a little bit of background. This is obviously somebody who's just getting into the career space. And I enjoyed managing finances and creating investment plans for retirees were clearly skills that were on the job posting that this person wanted to include onto this in this answer. So even though you are giving some background, one of the things that I hope you've picked up on, and this is not a trick question, but what is missing from this? What is missing from this answer? And what I'm getting at here is you don't want to start this question with the phrase, I was born and raised, okay? This is not a lifetime history of what you are doing. This is giving a brief sense of who you are and a little bit about your background beyond your resume and how it ties to the job that you are applying for. So think about your formula. How are you going to answer this question? What personal information makes sense? Because it is okay to include some personal information. What skills do you have that most match the role? And how does that make you a strong candidate? So I was asked how I would answer, tell me about yourself if being interviewed for the lead career expert role. Here is what I came up with. I've been fortunate enough in my career to find roles that allow me to leverage my superpowers. I am a relationship builder and an accountability partner. So when I have the opportunity to work with somebody to achieve a goal, I'm really able to dive in, ask the right questions, and lean into collaboration with somebody to put a plan in place to achieve a goal. So whether that's working with small business owners, a job seeker, or a career changer, I know that I'm able to help them achieve what they are looking for. As a career coach and resume writer, I have my pulse on the trends in the job market and what job seekers need to do to have a successful job search. So as a lead career expert at FlexJobs, I look forward to getting to do that every day, and I'm really excited about this opportunity. All right, so remember, personal information is okay to include, but you aren't going to include your life story. Instead, you will connect your skills and your strengths to the organization and the role. Finally, highlight what makes you a strong candidate. When an employer asks what your strengths are, this question shows self-awareness, and in your answer, it will be most beneficial if you include a strength of yours that is needed in the role. Let's see what a sample answer could sound like. I'm incredibly excited about this role because I'm passionate about seeing the big picture and finding more efficient workflows. For example, in my previous role, I identified opportunities to streamline a simple daily process in how tasks were communicated and completed. Ultimately, those tiny savings added up, and they saved the company an hour per day, which added up to a savings of over 250 hours of labor yearly. This role is an excellent fit for me because it allows me to use those same analytical and problem-solving skills within a larger organization. All right. Now, the flip side of that is, what is your greatest weakness? Again, you will show self-awareness in your response. And while you want to be honest, being positive and, forward-thinking are very important here. Also, don't highlight a weakness that needs to be a strength in the role. So let's see what our career expert, Keith, has to say as an example to an answer for this question.
In the past, I've struggled a bit with delegating tasks to others. I sometimes have a tendency to take on too much myself, which can cause me to feel overwhelmed during periods of high volume. To overcome this, I've been a lot more intentional about learning the strengths of my team members and finding opportunities to hand off responsibilities that I know they can perform well. I still make sure to check in with them regularly to see how they're progressing or offer support if they're struggling. But overall, this has helped me manage my own workload much more effectively while also improving the shared success of my team.
Okay, so hopefully you were able to get a sense of the honest, positive, and forward-thinking approach to this answer. So you are identifying something that is likely a weakness of yours, or that is a weakness of yours, but you are looking at it in a way that is positive and forward-thinking, and how you make adaptations for compensating for that particular weakness. All right, here is another example. I think my greatest weakness is that I struggle a bit with balancing multiple priorities. I can lose myself in a project, which can make me feel overwhelmed and stressed when numerous tasks are on my to-do list. To manage this, I've been setting smaller goals and creating better task management and daily workflow routines. All right, so that is another example for you for this question. As I mentioned earlier, employers are wanting to know if you'd be a good fit for the organization, particularly as part of the culture of the team. Part of the reason that they ask, why do you want to work here, is to see how much you understand and know about the company. And again, this is why that research can be so critical to the success of your interview. Here is an example that shows that you've researched the company, you are relating to key parts of the role, and you are connecting with your career goals. I'm interested in this role because it offers me the chance to combine my marketing knowledge with my passion for helping others. I learned about the organization's mission and how it helps people improve their lives through education and financial literacy. I've watched the jobs page for roles fitting my skill set, and I was delighted when this position was posted. I know I can be an asset to the team, and I'm excited about this role's potential opportunities. All right, so you're covering a lot of ground in a short time, and that's exactly what employers are hoping you do. Okay, so it's pretty critical throughout the interview process to not say anything about a current or former employer that is negative. This would give whoever is interviewing you pause and could make them concerned about how you would view them or the organization, and talk about them if something wasn't right with the role or the fit if you ended up being an employee. So when answering this question, again, you want to be positive and forward thinking, just like you were when you answered the question about your greatest weakness or one of your weaknesses. Also, be sure to mention how excited you are and for what part of the role that you are applying for and you are most looking forward to. So let's see an example answer here.
You could say something like, I'm really excited to work at an organization like yours, one that focuses on innovation and collaboration. That is always the type of team that I like to work with, and I really learned a lot in my previous role, and I'm excited about potential opportunities at your company. Everything that I've read about what you do here says to me that you create a culture of innovation and collaboration, and that's really what I'm looking for.
All right. Let's see another potential answer, this one in text. I'm looking for a new role because I want to pursue an opportunity that will help me expand my skill set and build upon what I've learned so far. The company I work for has a well-established senior team, so there's less room for growth. One of the things I love about my current job is the ability to impact small business success with efficient web design. This position is the perfect combination. I'll have the chance to challenge myself in a new way while working more closely with the customer to bring their vision to life. So it's okay to want some more career development opportunity, and it's okay to share that. You can do that in a way that does not give your current employer a hit or is viewed as saying something in a negative way. So this can be another approach to answer that question. All right, here we go. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Companies do like to know you are forward thinking. You've already heard that in some of the advice in the previous questions. They want to know that you have considered where you might be in the future. They also want to know, they also want to ensure that your goals do align with the company goals. Again, I can't say this enough. This is why your company research is so vital. You want to map out your long-term goals, and for each interview you have, highlight how those long-term goals relate to the role. Let's listen to this sample answer and then we'll watch the video too. In 5 years, I hope to become an industry expert that inspires school-age kids from all backgrounds to pursue an engineering career. Ideally, I'd love to use this role as a platform to learn and grow to become a company leader where I can mentor new team members. As I mentioned previously, the company's culture and mission statement align closely with my values, and in 5 years, I'm hoping to be here growing my career. All right, so that's a sample answer. Here is another one from Mr. Keith.
In 5 years' time, I hope to be an industry expert in this field. For now, I want to continue expanding my expertise with this type of service offering, and then eventually leverage that expertise into a position that would allow me to train, support, and manage others. I think that this position would push me to quickly master all aspects of the implementation and service delivery processes so that I can successfully support key client accounts to drive growth and increase retention. In turn, that would give me hands-on experience in identifying and applying best practices so that in the future, I can lead and support others in this type of role.
All right, so hopefully these were really helpful examples and answers for you for this particular question. I think that understanding and knowing how to be forward thinking and also aligning your goals with the role and the organization can be really beneficial. All right. Earlier in the presentation, I did mention a few sample curveball questions. Curveball questions really assess how you handle being caught off guard. And just remember, there's not really a right or wrong answer to these questions. But here are some ways to navigate through curveball questions. First, stay calm, take a minute, and don't stress, okay? This question, they're not meant to be something that you can fully anticipate, right? Because there are probably millions of curveball questions that somebody could choose. Remember that it is designed to reveal your thought process, to show your personality, sort of give some insight into your personality and maybe even your values. It is okay to say, would you mind if we came back to that question later, so that you have a little bit of additional time to answer that? And maybe that might be a way that you can end the interview going back to that question. And again, the final tip really is practice, right? Anticipate or figure that you might be asked a curveball question or two through your interview process before you land a new job. And just make sure that you are aware that that can happen and practice some of those curveball questions and answers. Even though it's not going to be the exact question you're going to be asked, it can really help you process that live in the interview. All right. No interview would be complete these days without you as the interviewee having the opportunity to ask the company or the interviewer some questions. So we just wanted to share some ideas and reasoning behind what questions you can or should think about when coming up with what you want to know about working for this particular company. This will help you get insight into the culture, the management style of the person on your team. It might also be able to give you a look into what the work-life balance is like at the organization. So some ideas to consider are questions like, how is success measured? You could even say, after 90 days, what would success look like in this role? Or after onboarding, what does success look like in this role? How would you describe the company's culture? And what is a challenge the team is facing right now? These are just a few examples. There are other examples and other ideas that we'll send in the resources, but it just will give you an idea of where you can brainstorm and get started on what questions you want to ask the organization and which ones you should be prepared when they give you time to do so. Sometimes there's only time for like one question, and so you'll just have to pick, but I always recommend having 3 or 4 written down in case there's some extra time. All right, let's talk about what to do for action steps. How do you put this into practice? First, prepare, research, and check your space for your interview if it's going to be on video. Again, you are going to practice, write out your answers, and practice. Think about what questions you want to ask of the organization, and plan to have some downtime before the interview starts to take some time to be meditative, to take some deep breaths, to relax, whatever it is that's going to allow you to be focused and present when the interview starts. All right, as a reminder, we are going to be sending a copy of this webinar as well as the resources within the next week to the email that you registered with. So check your spam folder if you do not see it. If you need any more information on any other topic when it comes to your job search, please go to flexjobs.com/blog. So many articles there on any topic you can imagine for your job search. All right, let's go ahead and go to the Q&A section of the presentation. So please go ahead, put those there, and do upvote any questions that you would also like an answer to. All right, everybody, let's see what we have. Hi guys, Toni here. Great questions coming in. Thank you for that. And as a reminder, again, we will be sending out a recording. I saw some questions about getting access to the slides. So the recording will be sent out, so you'll be able to play this back and pause and take all the notes that you want and that you need. So first question. What recommendations do you have for answering a question about technology or tools you haven't used? So this is something that, again, you want to think about maybe what transferable skills that you have, or let's say a common question I think that might be asked about a technology would be maybe, do you have Salesforce experience, or tell me about experience with, I don't know, some other CRM brands, but basically CRM systems, right? And so if the specific CRM system they are asking you about you don't have experience with, you could say something like, well, while I haven't used Salesforce a lot, I do have experience using X CRM system, and I'm able to navigate through that database and keep track of important, client information, as well as any projects that we have ongoing. So I know that I would be able to take a peek at Salesforce and be off and running very quickly, or something along those lines. So you're going to talk about your ability to adapt and adopt and learn new technology tools very quickly based on previous experience you have using other tools. Let's see. Regarding the Zoom background, is it appropriate to select a static scenic photo instead of sharing the live space behind me? I think absolutely this can work. A couple things to note, and this is again why practice is pretty important. I typically will blur my background. Zoom has a blur feature. So that is an option. I like that option a lot of times because sometimes with virtual backgrounds, I don't know if you've ever noticed people using certain virtual backgrounds, if they move, you can, it sort of kinks a little bit, or you can kind of see the background, or sometimes the virtual background will cut off part of your hair or your head and it looks a little bit funny. So I would say yes, absolutely. But test those backgrounds with your lighting, with your space before you do the interview. Move around a little bit to see if anything in the background is distracting, and then make your decision from there. Zoom is also really great because there is a feature where you can, I forget what it's called now that I'm on the spot, enhance your, I don't think it's called enhance your appearance, but it's in the settings. And if you have your video on, it just sort of blurs the subject that's on the camera. So things look a little bit smoother. All right. I'm a retiree looking for a part-time job to contribute to society and make some extra money. Just something simple like data entry or online assistant. What do I say to the 5-year question? This is a great one. And I know we answered it in the video, but we'll talk a little bit about it. And also I do want to put a little plug in. At the end of this month, we actually are, we have another new webinar coming out on how to interview as an older job seeker. And this question we talk about, but we'll talk about it here too. What you want to do is you still want to be positive and forward thinking. And based on what you are saying here to us, you may plan to keep working for more than 5 years. And so what I would say is, at this point in my life, I really am looking to be able to contribute to a team, to be able to share my experience and my talent and my time with an organization to help other people do X. And I don't see myself wanting to stop doing that within the next 5 years. So I hope to continue being a contributing member to a team for the next several years, something along those lines. Let's see. Can we get a copy of the slides? So we'll be sending out the recording. When will additional spots be available for the FlexJobs coaching and resume bundle? That is sold out until further notice. Unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that. What is the most common mistake people make in an interview that we can prepare for and avoid? I think it's hard to say one most common mistake, right? And I also think that let's reframe here and see what happens if we do that. If you are getting to an interview, you are a finalist. The organization is already thinking you could be, and you likely would be a good fit for the role. And they want to talk to you to confirm that based on what they've seen on your resume, your cover letter, your LinkedIn profile, all of those types of things, right? So I think going into an interview, and when you don't get offered the job, that doesn't necessarily mean you made any mistakes at all in the interview. It might mean they hired somebody internally. It might mean they didn't hire anybody at all. It might mean that between the two people that they interviewed, there was a slight difference, and maybe the person that got the job offer had one more year of experience, or something very slight, or maybe one person, the person that got the job offer wrote a thank you note, and the other person didn't, and that was the deciding factor. So I think if we look at it as though not that we make mistakes and that's the reason that we don't get the job, let's reframe that sometimes, and think about, I did these things really well in the interview, and I wish I may have spoken about that a little bit more clearly, or I wish I would have brought that up, and really reflect after an interview on what you did well and what things that you want to improve upon for next time. Now, that being said, there are certainly glaring mistakes that people can make. Like if you don't test the technology and you're really not comfortable with it, and you, get frustrated and visibly upset because something isn't going your way with the technology, which is essentially sort of out of your control once the interview starts, showing some of that frustration and anger, if that would be how someone would respond, could be a mistake, because an employer might say, well, if they can't handle this or do any troubleshooting, then that's maybe not somebody that would be a good fit on the team. So those would be more of the mistakes that I would think about, but we don't often make those types of mistakes in an interview. Another thing to keep in mind, it's not necessarily, well, I guess you could say it's a mistake if you ramble and talk too long when you're answering questions, particularly tell me about yourself or tell me about a time when. If you talk for, 3, 5, 7 minutes, it's very hard to listen to somebody talk for that long without breaks. And so those are some things that I would think about too. So hopefully that's a helpful answer, and some things that you can, kind of focus on as you go forward and prepare for your next interviews. How do you record your test run? If you're using Zoom, there is a recording feature on Zoom. I believe it's there for the free accounts as well. It is in the option, I think it's usually either in the menu at the bottom, or there's an option that says more, and then there's a hamburger menu, and you click on that, and it should say record to your computer or record to the cloud, and you can record and play that back. If you are not using Zoom and using a different service, you might be able to record directly to your computer. That would be computer dependent, I think. All right, let's see. I want to get some new questions. Why do applications ask your gender, disability, and veteran status and race? Sometimes those are protected classes. Those are legal questions that organizations ask. A lot of times on applications, it will say we don't use this, or this is not visible on your application. I think I'm getting to that. So that is something that companies tend to ask on those online applications. Let's see. If you have participated in paid market research as a way to generate income while being laid off work for a long period of time, is it okay to include that in an interview? When asked what you have been doing while away and you were unemployed? If so, what is the best way to communicate that? So I would think about, the skills that you had to do. If you were doing paid market research, were you trying products? Were you answering questions? Did you have to communicate with different people? Certainly I would say that in your career break section on your resume, you could say that you did, a few market research assignments while you were out of the workforce. And so that's something that you could answer. I recently did an interview where the questions were almost all star questions. Yes, that's very common too. And honestly, we could have a webinar, like a day-long workshop with all of the popular webinar questions. And for the purposes of this, we just were able to pick the 5 that we did. But how do you properly prepare for an interview like that? Is there a list of the most common types of situations you are likely to get asked about in a star interview? You know, I think it varies depending on the organization and the industry that you are in terms of what questions are asked. But any question that asks you, you know, describe a time that you did something, or tell me about a project, or tell me about a failure, something along those lines, those are behavioral questions. And the framework to answer those would be situation, you know, pick a situation, talk about the tasks that you did to tackle that. What was the action that you took to complete those tasks? And then finally, talking about the result. We do have an article on the blog about this. Let me see if I can pull it up really quickly. And I'll put it in the chat so you guys can gather that. I think it's in the resource section also, but here we go. This is a good guide that you guys can use to help prepare for STAR interview questions. And in our webinar on interviewing in general, we do go over this in a bit more detail. All right, let's see. If you have returned to college to finish your bachelor's degree during COVID, do you put career break in your resume, or will it be evident when you put education before experience? So it's not necessary to put obvious with the placement of education on top. This is a good question, and I like how you're thinking, because obviously you've decided to move the education section before your experience. And so you're saying that you finished your degree, you're going to put your date of your degree. So here is, so I think you can do it that way. Absolutely. And then you, the risk. Okay. So I'm sorry that I'm having a hard time answering this and starting in a smooth fashion, but the risk that you run in not putting it as a career break is that applicant tracking systems tend to track dates of employment. Okay. And so if part of your break is because you are in school, if you add a career break section to your work experience, you are able to add that, and you are able to add dates with a bullet about completing your degree, so that when the document is parsed by the applicant tracking system, that data is there. Of course, if only somebody was reading it and it didn't have to be part of an applicant tracking system, the way that you're talking about doing it with your education section ahead of your work experience does, of course, work. But because we know applicant tracking systems track those dates, I think that you probably want to try to also include it in your career break section, even though it might seem a little bit redundant. All right.